Hi, I'm Areej Zarrouq. I will be in conversation with filmmaker Suzannah Mirghani, director of الست. The short is part of the film program A Fire Walk with Her by Warehouse 421 and Cinema Aqil. Hi, Susanna. I'm Areej. The great thing about Sudan that somehow it's a very small community, so we have been introduced to each other. We met a couple of times. Are you recording? What's going on?
It is recording.
Oh my God, okay. Okay, so yeah, we met. I briefly met you in Sudan when you came here to shoot your film, الست. And we didn't get a chance. I remember the day we met, there was some chaos happening. There was a shooting going on, and we didn't get to spend much time together. So I managed to watch the film, and I have a lot of questions. But first, I have a lot of questions to you, and I cannot skip asking you, being Russian and Sudanese, half Russian, half Sudanese, and how were there like two Suzannas coexisting together in harmony, or was this confusing? I mean, we cannot. I mean, we cannot ignore that. Yes, we are moving towards becoming more into universal citizens, but still we cannot skip where we come from, where we belong to, and so how did that work for you?
Yes. You asked, first of all, thank you, and hi, Areej. Good to see you again. And I remember that day very well in Sudan. That was the day that I thought, oh, Sudan is not as stable as I thought it was. Yeah. There was a whole day of shooting in the streets, and we had to hide. And I stayed with Sarah, my art director that day. But you know, it's part of the transition, it's part of the change, and that's when I realized, okay, nothing is as smooth, because we had a really smooth time up until that day. But yes, good to see you again. And regarding your question, yes, I am a multitude of people. So you asked me, is there two Suzannas? I would say there are multiple Suzannas in all forms. And for me, the question of identity isn't just the split in nationality or the split in ethnic or cultural background, but identity in all its forms, whether you are a woman or whether you're young or old, or where you've lived or how much you've studied or which class you come from. All of those things are never in harmony and always in harmony. You know, there's bits of you, you're a big jigsaw. And I always find it quite curious when people are stable in their national identity. When someone says to you, I'm American, or I'm Sudanese and I am pure and whole, which is obviously never the case. But I like to wear it proudly that I have multiple personalities, and I speak in, you know, it depends on who's asking me the question. So now you're Sudania, I'm Sudania, right? If a Russian was to ask me the question, I would be more Russian. But I actually grew up, my formative years was growing up in Sudan. So I lived for the first few years of my life in the UK. And then we moved to Sudan, and I was there as a young girl and as a young teenager as well. So for me, this is really the part of my life that is in the film, because the 15-year-old girl in the film is a reflection of the 15-year-old me.
But okay, that, now that you said that, is it like, it's like there's a cliche idea, or I don't know if it's cliche or not, but artists always are living in a bewilderment. Like if you're an artist, you must be living in some crisis, like some personal crisis. It could be all inside your head. So do you think that kind of like pushes art to the surface, these kind of like struggles that because I myself have been living, even though Egypt is not so far from Sudan, yet like you said, it's not only about where you live or where you come from, but it's a bunch of things, and it kind of forms who you are. So do you think that's how you became, that's how you got to, you took that track of becoming a filmmaker? Like, how did you decide to become a filmmaker?
For
Like,
sure.
how do you do that?
I agree with your statement 100% that for an artist to have some kind of conflict that they want to share, because if your life was rosy and perfect, what is it that you want to share other than some Instagram posts that are heavily filtered, you know? So it's like, try to find the rough and the things that don't gel. And this is like in film especially, this is the whole point, is to reveal these conflicts between personalities, between people. And for me, in El Cid, it's all those dramatic big dramas are happening in one small family, in one small hush. And even though it's not, you know, it's like, it's high drama on a small level in this tiny little village where a girl's life hangs in the balance. And she doesn't even have the choice or the voice to speak up on it. But yes, I agree fully that there has to be some struggle, there has to be some conflict. And it reminds me of a line from Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen is one of my favorite singer poets. And he says, there is a crack in everything, but that's how the light gets in.
Absolutely, yeah, true. Okay, now that we're talking about El Cid, as one of the audience, I could clearly see an element of symbolism in the film. That kind of made it interesting to me. But at the moment, I felt so frustrated. I was confused. I didn't know to hate Al-Hajja, the old woman. And I didn't know it, or love her. I loved her power. I loved how powerful she is. And I loved how she managed to come out with a beautiful or an empowering conclusion out of her personal story. But at the same time, I didn't know why I wasn't very happy about how she dealt with Nafisa. So, I mean, can you tell us more about this relationship, about Al-Hajja and Nafisa?
Yeah, it reminds me of all forms of authority. So the Haboba Al-Cid is the authority in this particular household, in this particular family. But all families, your parents, your grandparents, your elders, they all hold some kind of authority over you. And sometimes it's in their interest, and sometimes they think it's in your interest. So everything that a Haboba is doing for Nafisa is for her best interest. She wants the best for her. She wants to protect her. But sometimes too much protection is smothering. It's suffocating. But it comes from a place of love. This is the ultimate point, is that it comes from love, even though it's twisted. You know, she has a twisted kind of love, but it's all for protection. And I think we all feel that as teenagers. We all felt that. Where our family is really suffocating us, but they're all just trying to protect you. I mean, which family, which parent doesn't actually want the best for their child? So I find that to be a really interesting thing to show in cinema, which is too much love can kill you. You know, there's like sometimes, and especially in conservative societies, girls don't have any say whatsoever. And so I wanted to show that.
So where did El Cid come from? Like, how did the idea, how did it evolve? And how did it actually, I mean, when did it spark and how? And how did this evolve into a story and then into a film?
We all have an El Cid in our family. Everyone in Sudan at some level has an El Cid in their family. There's an older woman, maybe it's not your direct line, maybe it's, you know, it's the larger family, maybe it's the extended family, but she's a common motif, she's a common character. And I remember all these little old women getting together. My habboba was mushallakha, my habboba was a powerful woman. She was blind, she had sukkari, and so she was blind, but she still told people what to do. You know, it doesn't matter who was walking past. It was like, inta, hey, you know. But she commanded, she had a commanding presence. And so I always found that to be really interesting, that there is a little old woman who has no teeth, who is blind, and yet everyone still listens to her, because that's the beauty of the family structure in Sudan, is that the respect for the elder is supreme. It's absolute.
True.
And it's very hard to negotiate that. It's very hard to challenge that. And so then I thought, well, that would be a perfect situation to have this grandmother and a granddaughter. And this is also common. Arranged marriages are also common. And it's common for the habboba to be that arbiter, to be that judge of the potential groom. And obviously highly dramatized in this film. But for me, sometimes the larger political questions, or the larger questions about power relationships and gender come from the family, from the very small people around you.
So when did you decide this has to become a film? Like, how did you start structuring it in your head? I mean, before you actually voice it out and say, I want to make that film. What was the process between Suzannah and Suzannah?
Yeah, and Susanna's. This is always an interesting, an interesting story, an interesting question, because it never comes from one thing. There is never one thing. It's a collection of, so for me, it's a collection of memories that all come together like a dream. It all comes together, the cotton farming, the weaving, the habboba, the white dress. These are all elements from Sudan that I carry with me, that I remember from when I was a teenager. And they're always kind of, and I'm a writer also, so I like to write little vignettes sometimes. And so this was, the habboba character was a small vignette, the cotton fields were a vignette, and somehow, I don't know, I honestly don't remember the exact spark, but somehow they all came together. And then when, so I live in Qatar now, in Doha, when the Doha Film Institute had a script writing workshop, this is where I thought, okay, now I have to have a story. What is my story? Oh, these little elements, I'm going to put them together like a jigsaw and then make a story out of it.
Okay, I'm going to get more into the technical part of making a film. Like, now that you said you had that, there was this script writing workshop or script development workshop. So what do you think in El-Sit that you knew once you mentioned you had your story was sold? You knew it, even if you didn't say it, you didn't brag about it, but you knew.
That's another great question. I've never been asked these questions, so I have to take some time to think about it. I don't know. I think you know, if you're a writer, I think you know when you're satisfied with your script. You know when something is not bothering you, when you can sleep at night, when you can wake up and say, this is my script, I'm happy with my story, I love my story. Because otherwise, I would never get it made if there were still things that were nagging at you, because then that would haunt you for the rest of your life. You know, as a writer or as a filmmaker, if you did something wrong, or there was something not quite right in the story and you went ahead and you made it, you will regret this for the rest of your life. So I think that the satisfaction of having completed the script writing workshop and having read my script and thinking there is nothing in this that bothers me, and I love the characters. I love, down to Babikir, who doesn't say anything, down to these are characters that I love and I can stand behind 100%. And then obviously El-Sit is just, you know, she comes with her own, I often say this, which is when I write characters, they exceed the page. They become, they take on life. They take on life of their own. And then they become something that you can no longer control. And this is what I love about
Okay.
it, is because I feel that with Sit, I cannot control her. And she knows more than I know, even though this is my story. That's how powerful I feel she is.
So when you were writing Sit, I mean, I don't know, but I believe, don't correct me if I'm wrong, or I mean, this is something that could be open to different opinions. But when a filmmaker, a writer, even a painter are working on something, they usually have something they want to voice out, something that's nagging. And I'm sure that something was there. You wanted to say something. It could not be one thing. It's probably so many things. But what was the feedback? What were the comments you got? Were they in sync with what you wanted to actually say? Because with the symbolism in the film, there's a lot of room left for different perceptions and for interpretations, and for the audience to come to their own conclusions and to sort of develop their own opinion about this sort of that situation that most of the girls in this side of the world are put in. So were they in sync? Were the comments you got in sync with what you were trying to put out there, or you got like diverse opinions and a clear contrast of opinions?
I mean, for sure, it's every single person has an opinion and every single person has their own interpretation. And sometimes I'm really interested to hear new interpretations about the film that I haven't heard before or I haven't thought about, which is also beautiful because the work opens itself up to people differently. People see it differently, and therefore the work is different to them. I mean, as you said, I have multiple storylines in this film, whether it's about the history of colonialism or cotton or tradition versus modernity. All of these elements are available if that's what you're looking for. The basis of the entire film, I think, is giving a girl, a 15-year-old Sudanese girl, a voice. Because literally in this film, she doesn't speak.
While she was voiceless. Exactly. In the film, she was completely silent. I love that. How, yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt but I just
her,
had to say that because I love how silent she is.
Exactly. So she doesn't say a word throughout, but I think for me it was very deliberate because her silence, I think, speaks very loudly. So you hear her silence. You hear that there's something about her that she wants to say and that she cannot say. So if you ask me for one message, I would say it is for a young girl to stand up for herself, at least to be able to choose her own groom or to choose her own future. But again, there are multiple storylines. There's the cotton, there's colonialism, there's filial piety, there's family relationships, there's Aisha, the mother, who is a social climber. She just wants to be a middle class, mama, all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to hear, I'm always curious to have discussions with people about the film and what they take from it.
So as a female filmmaker, what usually happens, and I've seen this happen, it happened to me, it happened to other friends and colleagues, when you're a female filmmaker, especially again at this side of the world, and you make a film about females, or the lead character is a female or a woman or a girl, or it's very easy, or it's like for others to point at you as the feminist filmmaker. Do you see yourself as a feminist filmmaker?
100%.
100%. But then again, I'm sure that you're interested in like sort of making films about. So will you always be keen to have that element of feminism in your films, or it will just be organic?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, as opposed to thinking of feminism as a thing, it's not a thing, right? It's like, it's who we are. So yeah. I cannot say that I'm making a feminist film or not. I'm making a film that I believe to be true. And if I believe that women should have a greater role, both politically or socially, then that is just the kind of film that I'm going to make. I'm not going to say it's a feminist film. I'm going to say this is a Suzannah Mirghani film.
Yeah. Okay, and the father in the film, actually, I mean, I felt that he was a bit sort of submissive, and I don't know how I felt about that. I mean, it kind of like felt sort of satisfying to see him how he kind of like magnifies the role of women, of his mother in his life, and how important to him it is to get her blessings. But at the same time, I was wondering, did you mean to kind of like sort of, I wouldn't say shrink his character, but sort of, do you get what I mean? Like, it was clear that he's not a powerful person.
Yes, he is Bilal, he is El-Sid's son, you know, so it's like if she is this powerful woman and if she has raised him the way that she wants to raise a boy in her world, in her universe, then this is the result, this is the product. You're going to have a caring father who also wants what his wife wants at the same time, because he is El-Sid's son, but he's also married to Aisha, who has her own ideas and her own path for Nafisa. But I would say that by the way, he's played by the wonderful Sir Mahjoub, who passed away this year, unfortunately. But he was a really, really just amazing actor. But yes, he's also kind of deliberately a different kind of man in comparison to Nader. So I didn't want to have two alpha males in this situation, you know, because...
But do you see Nader as an alpha male?
I see Nader as an alpha male, yes. I see him as someone who knows what he wants and gets what he wants, and this is what he's come to get, and he gets it in the end. So my idea was also not just to say that always men are powerful or men are alpha males or men have all the power all the time, which they do not, even in a place like Sudan, you know? So there's different characters. And I think everybody in this family has a different character.
I personally felt that Nader is, Bilal, to me, it was very interesting to see how he deals with his mother and his wife, and how he looks out for his daughter. But I felt that he is kind of like dominated, and that's a discussion I usually have with many of my friends, my feminist friends, because I always have that debate with my friends whether I am a feminist or not, and then they go like, you live like a feminist, you behave like a feminist. And I'm like you said, feminism is not a thing, it's just the way you approach life, and then you become a feminist without you even knowing it. So I always wondered, if I was to like daydream about a perfect world where there was balance, what is balance? Like, at the moment I felt sympathy towards Nader, because I felt he's hiding a lot of weakness behind that alpha male image, rather than it was coming out of a powerful place. And then again, I could see in the film there's like the struggle of power, even when it comes to not only between males and females, but also in the community, in the concept of colonialism, and power has been like an issue throughout history. So do you think, because we've been discussing this in Sudan now, do you think film has power to change in the long run? Like, do you see that as a filmmaker you can add to how the community and the society will change in Sudan? Do you think El-Sid and and films like a Sit, You Will Die at 20, and like the film of Marwa Zain, all the recent films that are clearly discussing very sensitive topics. Do you think our society is ready to change, or do you think you will have a bigger battle to face the more you make films like that?
Well, I'll take the first part of your question first, which is...
Sorry, yeah, that's a very long question.
Yes.
No, there's so much going on in my head about this.
Yes, no, regarding the first part of your question, which is, does art have the power to change? And I would say, again, absolutely, because anything that is representing, anything that represents people, you are representing in visual form or in artistic form or in oral form, you are representing someone else, and you are showcasing this to the people of Sudan or to the international community as well. So in that representation, I think there's a lot of responsibility to see how are you representing Sudan and these issues. So I think there is power to change, because these are conversations that we're having now, me and you, on this platform that is probably going to be watched or listened to by people. It's like we're having a public conversation about arranged marriage. We're having a public conversation about the women footballers in Marwa Zain's film. We're having conversations about Sufism in Amjad's film. So it's like having these it has to start from somewhere. There has to be some kind of spark. And I think in Sudan, our conversations are political. They're always political because we have lived a very political existence for a very long time, whether it's wars or whether it's just the internal struggle in the country. So it's also interesting and nice, I think, to take those issues and address them in a different format and in artistic format.
Okay. Again, a film being filmmaking like to become a filmmaker, it comes with a lot of costs. It's exhausting. It's not especially when you're working on alternative cinema I mean it's very exhausting. It's not usually lucrative, and it is a hard task. It's a chore to actually find funds, to convince funders with your film. What keeps you motivated? I mean, clearly you have a lot to say, but how do you hang in there?
This is all of the questions that you're talking about in terms of funding and in terms of finding support and all this. Imagine having to do all of that for just a short. Imagine having to do it for a feature as well, right?
Exactly.
So it's like all the begging and the borrowing that I had to do to make this 20-minute film is gonna be times 100 if you get to making a feature. So all hats off to Hajjuj and Amjad and Marwa for having really just gone that route by making their features. It's hard, but it's necessary. It's the only way to get things done. But also to make this film working in Sudan with the highly professional cast and crew or crew specifically. Cast, a lot of them were first-time actors, so I wouldn't say that they were professional, but they were extremely...
Yeah, I would like to come to that in a bit. Yeah.
Okay, so yes, so it's hard. It has to be done. There are ways to do it. You have to know these ways, which funds to tap into, all of these kind of things. So there's a lot of experience, and there's a lot of research that you have to do. There's a lot of asking, there's a lot of begging, all these kind of things to get something made, but it's doable. It's very doable.
Do you think it makes a difference if you were selling a different kind of story? I'm sorry, I'm using the term selling, but I mean, it's kind of selling. I mean, if you were, would you ever like steer towards making it a bit sort of mainstreaming it, giving it a bit of a mainstream flavor? Would you steer towards that? I mean, as a compromise to get something out there?
No, I don't. I actually don't think we could be mainstream if we wanted to, because we don't have a repertoire of films in Sudan. So we don't have anything that we do. Any Sudanese film is going to be unique in a certain way, because there are landscapes and people and languages and things that we haven't seen before on screen. So I think even if you try to Disneyfy Sudan, there's still something that's going to be so unique and artistic about it, regardless.
It feels fresh. So, but did you ever consider making films that are that have a more of a universal identity? I mean, are you focused on making films in Sudan and about Sudan, or you would consider making a film about Russia or any other place in that case?
Well, El Cid is actually my first film shot in Sudan. I have other shorts that I made in Doha, in Qatar. So I have shorts that are shot about Bedouins in the desert. I do a lot of experimental films. I have my most recent film is called Virtual Voice, and it's all about social media and online. So you were talking about the 2 Suzannas or the 3 Suzannas. There you go. Each film has a completely different flavor. So much so that I've been told recently to kind of to focus on one thing and not be so diverse in my artistic output, which I find to be quite baffling, to really just ignore everything that is possible in yourself, to just say that I am this one monotone kind of person. But this is what sells. You are talking about selling. If you really want to sell yourself, you have to sell yourself as one coherent whole person. Already the fact that, Russian Sudanese is already confusing. So it's like, drop one of them. But it's like, how can I drop one of them? This is my life. This is who I am. Yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
No, it's okay. So can you tell me more about if there were any challenges what was your first step to come to Sudan, decide, pick the location, the casting, the crew? How did that go?
So I came to Sudan with my producing partner, Mيرغني, and I came with nothing but a script and some money. Those were the 2 things that I had with me. That's it. Nothing else apart from knowing Salwa Al-Khalifa, who is my assistant director. She was already in Sudan at the time. And we meet Salwa. Salwa introduces us to Abdullah, who is our line producer. Abdullah introduces us.
He's our hero here.
Oh, I love him so much. He's amazing. He's amazing. He's just, there was one thing that he was supposed to do that I thought would take 3 days, and he comes back in 20 minutes with having done this. He's fabulous.
That's typical Abdullah.
Oh yes, just wonderful. But it became a chain reaction because, as you know, the filmmaking community in Sudan is small and people work together quite often and they're friends and colleagues. So it was a chain reaction. One person introduced us to one person, to another, to another, to another. And we had our whole team within a week. We had our whole team that we had spoken to and that we had that had agreed to be with us. And of course, the fabulous Khalid Awad, who was our DOP, and he comes with his entire entourage, Khidir and M2 and all the people on camera. And then Mu'izz on lights. So it's like, it's so wonderful sometimes to see the silver lining of a small film industry, because this is all you need. Everyone is here, everyone is together, everyone has worked together, and you don't need to audition and go looking, and it's like everything is ready, everything is prepared, which is really wonderful. In terms of location, I find it to be so funny that Anan Muhammad is our production manager, and we say like, we're looking for cotton fields, and he's like, just use my family's field. It's like, what's the problem? And I'm sitting there going like, I have to go to Medini, and he's like, la, Al-Azaza, our village is here. So it's like things that I thought would be so difficult were the most simple, easy, and it's like, what's the problem? Chill, So this is my preconceptions was coming to Sudan and having to like really have this drama And in reality, it was the most simple thing, because everyone didn't, people weren't working on the film as employees. People were working on the film as friends, as a community. We went to people's homes. So like in Anan's village of Azaza, we were welcomed into the village. We were all sleeping in the houses of his relatives. It's things like that that you would never get anywhere else in more professional filmmaking countries, for example. And then for the location for the house, Simba's our costume designer, and he was like, "Oh, do you want to shoot in my granddad's house?" And we're like, "It's perfect. This house is perfect." So we didn't have to really scout that much for these things, and that's really the beauty of shooting in Sudan. Was that your question?
What about the casting? I mean, when you were building your characters, did you actually have a clear sort of picture in your head how they're going to look, how they're going to be, their physique, I mean, every detail? Did you have that? Or you kind of like had an outline and then you said you find out through the process of casting?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. So all the Haboba's images in my head from growing up are always there. They're all kind of a mix of Velsit. So you can never find exactly who you want anyway. So I was just hoping that we would find someone who would perfectly embody all of those characters together. And that obviously was, we had auditioned, her name was Raya. We had auditioned someone else initially, but unfortunately she had passed away just a couple of weeks before filming. So then we were introduced to Mama Rabha, and Mama Rabha was just fabulous. I mean, I can't now imagine the film without her. So so I'm very happy that she came on board. To answer your question, I knew who I didn't want. So when we had auditions, I knew no, and then it was like maybe, and then yes. You know, it's just like those kinds of questions. And we almost went with another young man for Nadir's role. We almost went with it, but I couldn't sleep that night. So I just thought, okay, if I can't sleep now before we've even started shooting, then it's not right. So in the end, we went with the fabulous Stam, Mohammed Majdi. He's just like, for me now, he's also the perfect role. And then Nafisa, obviously. Nafisa is just Mihad Murtada. She is to me Nafisa. That's it. There's no other girl. You know, there's this one girl and no others. And that's how I feel now about every single actor in this film. I do not feel at all that they could have changed. They're perfect for the role. They're perfect for me. And when I make my feature, inshallah, I want everyone to remain frozen in time. Just wait.
That actually, that brings me to a question, because as one of the audience, I really can't imagine any of them being like different. Like I wouldn't imagine any. I mean, sometimes I watch films and I go like, but that could have been this and that could have been that, and maybe if. But I never had that maybe if moment when it came to characters, and it's just amazing, because I was wondering, I mean, Mama Rabha clearly has experience as an actress, but how did you get Nafisa to I mean, we all know that it is one of the most difficult forms of acting, this silent, to just express and say so much without saying a word. How did you get to do that in such a short time?
She's just, you know, sometimes there are things that happen like magic, and she appeared at the audition out of nowhere with her father, and her father is Murtada Al-Tayyib, who is the driver in the film. That's her real father. So the two of them show up to audition, and he's perfect and she's perfect. And I'm thinking, you guys, where did you come from? You know, they're just like, and I got 2 for 1. You know, not just the young girl who would have had to have a parent on set anyway, or some kind of adult on set anyway. And here she is, with her father, and the two of them are doing the long hours and going to Medini, going to Azaza to shoot the cotton scenes and so on. So she took direction so brilliantly, this girl. She really had it in her to want to be an actor, and she made films herself. You know, she also wants to be a director, and she had kind of made her own small little films. So she got it. She understood what this was about and what this entailed. But I also like to think that as a 15-year-old girl in Sudan who is not always given a lot of say, I think that she really embodies that role as well, because she understands what it is. She understands what it is to be a 15-year-old girl in this situation. So I think she really gave us the reality of how she would react also.
That's amazing. And do you think now that you said that your feature film, are you working on your feature film?
Yes. So
what is it about?
It's simple. El Sit is a proof of concept. So when I started writing El Sit in that workshop that I mentioned to you, I wrote 40, 50 pages, which is no longer a short film. So I had to decide whether I wanted to go to Sudan and make the short or wait another year and continue writing and make the feature. But I had already applied to the Film Institute and got a grant, which meant that we should have probably started shooting. So the feature the idea of making the feature and waiting for it was probably not the right thing to do. And then the revolution happened. The revolution happened and we were like, now we should go. We should go now because this is the time. There's a lot of enthusiasm. People were saying, come to Sudan. It's a different Sudan. It's a new Sudan. I was so excited. I was so curious. I hadn't been back to Sudan in 20 years. So I left 20 years ago and I have never been back. And so I was like giddy. I was giddy with excitement to go back. Not only just to make this film, but also to go back to experience what a new Sudan felt like. So the feature is actually El Sit, but it's called Cotton Queen. El Sit is a distillation of the story. So I take some of the elements of the feature for El Sit, but it's the same characters and it's the same world. It's the same cotton farming village world, but it has a different story and it has a lot more focus on the politics of agriculture and on the politics and the history of colonialism. So in El Sit, we get hints. We just get small hints, the Sikka Hadid, about symbols of colonialism. Whereas in the feature, we kind of delve deep also into El Sit's past.
I see. So I can clearly see that the topic or the issue of colonialism is clearly something that you're focusing on, but I mean, where is that coming from, if I may ask? Like, does it have to do with just the history of colonialism in Sudan? I mean, I think I'd like to hear more about I mean, colonialism and how you see it and why are you so focused on the topic?
Well, in a way, it's still the formation of where we are today, right? So it's a part of the history of Sudan. It's something that after independence, everyone tries to get over, but we can't really get over the history of colonialism in Sudan, British colonialism. It's in our school systems, it's in the buildings, it's in the architecture, it's in the Sikka Hadid, it's literal monuments that are still there and cannot be ignored. And I don't think the history of colonialism can, and especially Al Jazeera. So the Al Jazeera project is a British colonial project. So it's like, these things need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed about how they change the course of Sudan and how they still somehow affect Sudan. And with the center being London and the center being England, there's still that relationship of the center and the periphery with Sudan, right? People still imagine London or imagine England or Inglaterra to be the center in some kind of historical imagination. So I thought that those were really interesting things to address, and to bring it out a lot more in the feature, which is it's called. Did I mention what it's called? It's called Cotton Queen, or بالعربي ملكة القطن.
It would be very interesting to see how will people react to this film, because I have been, you know, especially nowadays that we're in a very critical political situation. It's a transitional period for us, and there's a lot of turmoil going on, and sometimes people just kind of like blurt this sentence out. We would have been better off if we were still okay, clearly I have a problem with pronouncing the word. Well, so, and I always wonder, you know, that the egg and chicken situation. So is it, which it's better? I mean, if we could have been better off without it, or they have, some people actually do believe that colonialism have sort of set grounds for a better Sudan, but we didn't handle it properly. And it's a continuous debate, and it's very odd for me to actually think of colonialism as something positive to begin with. So I personally would love to see any debate that would come regarding that after you finish your feature. So when do you expect to be ready to shoot?
Well, I have a script now, so the script is done. Well, I mean, a script is never done. I'm always working, but it's like I have a script that I'm happy to present, and it just means that I have to spend the entire of the next year looking for funding. So all the running around that I did, I know, yeah, it's gonna be crazy. So all the running around I did for the 20-minute short, now I have to kind of do it all over again, but at higher stakes. So this is going to be a much more expensive film, which means that I have to have a lot more money. And my hope is to shoot next December 2022 or January 2023, because that's also when the cotton is in bloom.
Oh, so to wrap up our lovely conversation that I would love to carry beyond this interview or this talk, I would like to just ask, you know, what is a lesson that you always carry with yourself, like something you learned and you will never get over as a filmmaker, just a filmmaker, and as a Sudanese filmmaker after this experience you had in Sudan?
Another great question. Wow, you have me thinking. I believe that it doesn't matter in what situation you're in, whether it's a filmmaking situation or a work situation or a social situation, but I truly believe that you have to really respect the people around you. And that's my number one. That is my absolute number one, is that even on set, it doesn't matter. There has to be absolute respect and absolute trust between the people that you're working with. Otherwise, I cannot stand dictators. I cannot stand people who think that they can get things done by shouting or by exerting power. It's like, do you want to be with me on this film or not? So if you want to be with me, let's all really love what we're doing, and let's all really love how we're doing it, because I think I 100% believe that it shows in the end product, and it shows in how people work, if they work for love or if they work just because they got paid to do it.
And do you think are we on the right track? As I mean, do you think Sudan is in a, yeah, like you said, you used the term silver lining. Do you actually see a silver lining? Do you see it happening? And do you think with all the chaos happening politically and actually socially too, because we are, I mean, you've seen the debates that have went on about ستموت في العشرين, you will die at 20, and how people made up stories about the film even without even watching it. And now that, for instance, in Sudan TV, the TV hosts are coming out without their veils, with the complete liberty to choose between this or that. So do you think, again, I asked you previously the same question, but do you think, I mean, sometimes I feel maybe we're not ready yet. And I sometimes feel so discouraged. And it's very refreshing to actually talk to you and see, to look at it from a different angle. And that makes me ask you, do you think it's healthier emotionally and mentally for you just to keep a distance and only come when you're ready to shoot, or like, would you consider to settle in Sudan and get into that chaos? Because I think, as one of the people who are struggling to contribute, sometimes it kind of kills my appetite. And at so many times I feel like maybe I should leave and only come back when I have something to work on, or a film that I'm ready to shoot or so. So do you think you'll stay? Will you keep that distance, or you might dive in? Sorry for the long question again.
Yeah. I mean, it's a question that I can't really answer, because my life is here now. This is my life. This is where I live. This is where I work. But my relationship to Sudan is new again. I have fixed through film. So for those 30 years, you know, I didn't really even think of Sudan as a possibility for me, for a place that wasn't necessarily a great place for women at the time. You know, even my family had left, so it was like, well, what do you have left there? You know, what is it you're going to, or you know, so I now feel a new enthusiasm, I personally, for Sudan. And to come back in the last year, I wanted to come back and show the film. I still have not screened the film in Sudan. So it was supposed to happen last January at the Sudan Independent Film Festival, which was canceled because of Corona. So now the whole Corona year kind of took a whole year out of the life of El Sit meeting, coming home basically to Sudan. So I'm planning to come back this January. And as far as I know, the film festival is going ahead, and finally bringing El Sit home. She's been all over the world, like literally all over the world, all points of the compass. Northernmost, you know, she's Scott Base next month. She's going to screen at Scott Base, which has 15 people on Antarctica. Imagine. Seriously. So I'm really happy to bring her back to Sudan in January, and for us to kind of have a homecoming.
I love how you say I have her come back, because it's so beautiful. Because actually every time before even I watch the film, when they say El Sit, I always just imagine a woman like El Sit, you know. So yeah, I love how you. I'm very glad that it's going to be screened, because many people asked about that. I mean, you know, they just, you know, they ask you, as you know, you are the film people, you know, the film community. So where is that El Sit film? And I go like, you know, Corona and all that. And it happened also that You Will Die at 20, unfortunately, also didn't get to be screened. So people are getting frustrated. What's it with all those films that are getting rewards outside of Sudan and being screened out of Sudan? And where are they? So I think it's going to be great. And yeah. I'm so looking forward to watching it with the Sudanese audience, and I'll actually be watching you getting comments, and that would be also interesting.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to that, because the comments that I expect to have in Sudan are the comments of reality or representation, or it's like, we would never say this, or we would never do. I would imagine a lot more talking about the Sudanese-ness, the Sudaniness of the characters, or of this. And this is really a new conversation that I'm going to have, because all the conversations that I've had so far have been with you know, with international programmers and so on. There are Sudanese people all over the world that have seen the film. You know, you go to New Zealand, there's a Sudanese community. You go to wherever, there's a Sudanese community. So they have seen it. But I'm so curious about the questions that are going to come out of Sudan.
Yes, because I was actually thinking of this when I was watching the film, the proverbs. I mean, they're so Sudanese, and the film clearly has a very, very strong Sudanese identity. And even the facial expressions, they're very Sudanese, the body language. And I was also amazed about, because again, in my head, I do know that you haven't been living here, that you're mixed. And so I was wondering, how did she manage to get that out? But I mean, it's definitely a job well done. I mean, I just have one more question. What do you do when you take off, if you take off the cap of the director or the filmmaker? What else do you do?
Oh, I write. I'm a writer. I'm an editor. I am an avid watcher. I watch a lot of movies as well. I watch a lot of films. So every day is at least one. And writing mostly. Like most of my free time is writing.
That's great. Suzannah, Bajit, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you when you're back in Sudan. And congratulations for all the rewards you got. I personally, as a Sudanese citizen, regardless of being a filmmaker or not, I'm very proud. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Areej. Thank you for your excellent questions. Seriously, you had me thinking a lot. I didn't expect to be thinking so much, but shukran lak shadid, and I really appreciate your comments.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'll see you soon and stay in touch. Bye-bye.